There's an unprecedented influx of people coming over the border right now from Mexico, higher than it's ever been. Republicans blame Biden and his open policies. Democrats blame Trump. Who's to blame? And does it really matter? It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday night Rob Nelson Live show, coming at you from our incredibly beautiful sponsored, really not, unsponsored studios here in Florida, coming at you wherever you are on whatever social platform you stream on, whatever state, country, or planet you live on. We're talking immigration today. And I've been wanting to do immigration for a while, you guys, so we're going to dive in and do it today. As always, want to get your comments. Yeah, I'm going to try to get to more of your comments, but either way, Crafty, our producer, puts them up on screen, and you guys can have a dialogue with yourselves as well. So let's just kind of get right into it. The Homeland Security advisor, Alejandro Mayorkas, said that the number of people coming over the southern border is the largest number in 2 decades. And remember, before it was a lot, and it's literally more and more and more. They estimate thousands and thousands of people, kids alone. And this is the thing, right? So you've got 3 groups coming in. You've got single adults, you've got families, and you've got unaccompanied kids. Now, the Biden administration, despite the fact that they said they were going to be, open borders, let everybody in kind of thing, is pushing everybody back, actually. They're very clear in saying, we're sending everybody back. They used the word expelled. I was shocked. The Homeland Security said, we're expelling people. I'm like, oh, that's not very politically correct. That sounds like Trump. We're expelling everybody who's an adult coming in by themselves and families. We're sending them all back. What we're not going to do is separate kids from their parents, and we've got kids coming in all by themselves. What do we do with that? Well, that's where it gets shocking. The number of kids coming in, almost 600 kids a day. That's twice what it was a week ago, are coming in. There are over 4,000 kids now in custody inside that they're detaining because they come over. They don't want to send them back, so they detain them. 3,000 of them have been kept over the 72-hour legal limit. And they're putting them in what they're literally trying to build places to put them, right? And it's really a massive crisis if you think about it. And remember how bad it was back in the day, right? Let me play a video of you from when Trump was president and they were putting kids in cages. Crafty, can we play that video?
Yeah, hold on.
Mouse to tour some of these detention facilities and shelters, but as of right now, press is not being allowed inside. We did speak to an attorney, however, that is representing some of these migrant children. She says that they are rarely showering. A lot of them are hungry right now and having to take turns sleeping on the ground inside shelters and detention facilities, just like the one you see behind me.
Oh, thank God that's not what's happening now, right? Except it is. The video wasn't from Trump. The video is from last week. That is what's happening right now. Yeah, remember how bad it was? Trump was doing that. Now, in fairness, I'm going to make a point here. Trump had a very, very, very kind of negative, hate-driven kind of approach to immigration. And there's no question separating kids from their parents was a huge problem. But they were putting kids in detention centers because they have to do that. By law, you have to put kids in detention centers. Just so you understand, if you separated kids from their parents, you actually by law had to, right? You couldn't put a parent and a kid in the same detention center. The Biden administration is sending kids and families, the whole family, back. But if you keep the adult, then you got to separate the kid. That's what Trump did. They kept the adult instead of just grabbing them and sending them all back as a family. And so they separated them. But the problem is with the Biden administration, all these people are coming in. These kids are coming in by themselves. There are no adults. So they have to keep them. And just as you heard in that news report, which wasn't from Trump, was the press can't get in to see them. Why not? What are you hiding? And what they're hiding is the horrible conditions. Now, I'm not saying this is Biden's fault. This is an inevitable problem of having thousands of people come over the border that you don't have anywhere to put. But the reality is the kids are saying we get to shower once a week. We're having to trade out who gets to sleep. We're sleeping on the floors. We don't get to go outside and see any sunlight. One kid said the best time of day is, and they can't make calls to their family. I mean, it's all the same horrible conditions that were going on under Trump, except now they're going on under Biden. And my point in that is that it's, again, it was easy to blame Trump for doing that and leave the family separation issue out of it. By law, you have to put kids somewhere other than where the parents are. But they don't have enough facilities to house all these people. And although the Biden administration doesn't want to call it a crisis, it's a crisis. You got thousands of people coming over the border every day. Now, what happens here is that Republicans, of course, blame Biden and say it's your open border rhetoric. It's everything you said during the campaign. People feel like, hey, I can come if I want. And Democrats say, not at all. It's Biden. It's Trump's fault. And why is it Trump's fault? Well, it's Trump's fault because Trump basically had such draconian measures and he dismantled everything. He dismantled the infrastructure. He dismantled all the laws. At the same time, the Biden administration keeps saying the surge didn't start now. The surge started 2 years ago. 2 years ago, people started surging over the border. So it kind of gets problematic, right? Because you can't have it both ways, right? It can't be Trump's fault, but the surge actually started 2 years ago when Trump was president. It's one or the other. It's like lawyers in a case who go, we want to get him on first-degree murder, but in the alternative, we'll go for manslaughter. If this one doesn't work, we'll take that one. And it's the finger-pointing blame that bugs me, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Trump had a very restrictive approach to immigration, and that kept people from wanting to come. So they're talking about pent-up demand, and I think that's legit. People say they were waiting for a better opportunity. And so all of a sudden, Biden's president, that opportunity's now, and everybody rushes over the border. But the Biden administration is insistent on saying we didn't start this. There's a reason they're saying that. They don't want to say they started this. They don't want to say their rhetoric led to this because they're worried it's going to backlash on them in the elections, in the midterm elections. But the reality is that is what happened. I got a little clip of George Stephanopoulos interviewing the president. Let's play that, Crafty.
Let's talk about the crisis at the border. Some heartbreaking scenes down there right now. And a lot of the migrants coming in saying they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge?
Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years, and 19 and 20, there was a surge as well.
This one might be worse.
Right, so there it is, right? So we didn't do it. The surge happened. The surge happened during Trump. But the reason everybody's coming is because Trump was so hard-ass about it and dismantled everything that now they're all coming and we don't have anywhere to put them. Again, you can't have it both ways. Either they started coming now or they were already coming, so Trump didn't cause it to happen. But either way, all the finger-pointing doesn't accomplish a whole lot. To just rest this thing, though, on Biden, because I think it is important to understand what is causing it, although I don't think it's important to ultimately worry about who's to blame. Biden had to say this after that in that interview after talking to Stephanopoulos, because Stephanopoulos raises the point and says, you know what? He says, he says a lot, it's happening, and a lot of people are, and it's going to keep getting worse, and a lot of people say it's because of you and what you said. And Crafty, can we pop up the quote of what Biden said to that? He said, the idea that Joe Biden said, come, because I heard the other day that they're coming because they know I'm a nice guy, Biden said. Here's the deal. They're not.
Why did you come now?
Before, I couldn't come, he says, but the new president gave us an opportunity.
So there you have it. Of course they are. So let's just be honest. Why are people coming? People are coming because Joe Biden made an entire case of the fact that we shouldn't have super restrictive borders, that we would not, that we would treat people differently, which maybe is a good thing, that we wouldn't target people and go after them in their cities, that we wouldn't have a draconian approach to immigration, that we would welcome everyone in. Now, kept saying, we need to secure the border, but the kind of people read between the lines. I mean, come on. Captain Obvious. I'm going to start calling him Captain Obvious. I mean, the reality is, of course, that's why people are coming. You don't need to see 100 more people saying that. Of course it is. And every activist knows that. They waited, pent-up demand, waiting for an opportunity, and Biden promised him that opportunity. Did he mean to? I mean, people were saying this for months. They said, you're going to get a flood of people coming over the border. The minute you do this, you're going to get a flood. Now, do they all start coming on January 20th when Biden became president? Of course not. But they were already waiting. They were already ready. They were already starting the move. If Biden wins, when Biden won, now we can come in the country. Now it will be okay. And now they're having to deal with that problem. And that is a problem. It is a humanitarian crisis once again on our border. Call it what you want. Use whatever words you want. You know, the press called them cages when Trump did it. They're putting them in the same exact places with the same exact conditions. And they're calling it, you know, facilities like a jail cell. I mean, which is it, you know? So here's the biggest difference between Trump approach and Biden's approach. Biden leads with empathy. Trump led with fear. And that does have a lot to do with people deciding to come over the border, right? You're coming over the border with Biden because he's empathetic. He's promising hope. And smugglers take advantage of it. They say you'll be able to get everything. You remember in the debates, the whole debate about whether you'd get, you know, would you get health care? What kind of benefits would you get? Of course, that's why people came over the border. But here's the thing. What we miss about immigration and what most of our presidents miss is two things. And by the way, Trump did what he did because Trump made immigration a priority, right? He wanted people out. Biden made it a priority as well. First day of office, he did a number of like 7 executive orders on it. So clearly he was telegraphing a signal to the world. We're going to fix this. We're going to make it easier for people. But here's the thing people miss. And I think people miss this across the board when it comes to immigration. There's two main things. One's about us and one about other countries, right? People come to the United States from poorer countries for two really main reasons. One, safety. They think where they live is too dangerous. 2, economic opportunity. They're not making money. Their economy is a mess. They want a better economic future. That's not rocket science. That is why people come. People come into the U.S. from another country because they're either trying to get away from something they're scared of, too much crime, or they want to get a better economic opportunity. And that's fine. Except what we misunderstand and what we constantly do is we take this approach as this sort of like, we're like the God, the royal enabler. I'll get back to that in a second because I want to show you something that happens when it sort of addresses that and shows what, you know, it's a notion, right? That we think everybody wants to come here and we should let as many as possible because it's really good. Forget about our people for a minute. And I'm not anti-immigration at all. I'll get to that. But basically let people come. And we're doing everyone a favor in these countries by letting them come over the border, right? I mean, that's what they want, you know? We should be open. And I've always pointed out, how come Central American countries aren't that way? Why does Mexico seal up its southern border? Like puts armed guards down there. Well, here's an interview. It was fascinating. I'd recommend you watch the whole thing of the president of El Salvador 2 days ago on Tucker Carlson, of all places. And this is just a tiny bit of what he had to say. And before we play it, Crafty, he sets it up that the problem with immigration is that people leave the countries and they get used to a pattern of leaving and they come to the United States. So what that means is the United States is getting most of the income and those people send remittances. Most people do send stuff back home. So they send little checks home. And so their economies get dependent on these little remittances, like this little, you know, crumbs from the table. While the U.S. is actually getting the workers and the productivity and the real benefit. So most Latin American countries think this sucks for us. Here's the president of El Salvador.
So that makes these countries dependent on immigration because what you become a net exporter of people. You're not exporting products or services, You're exporting people. You keep these countries depending on that. The economy is like a vicious cycle. So it's bad for the United States because immigration will go up, and it's bad for our countries because people leaving the country will go up as well.
So there you have it, right? The president of El Salvador is saying, this sucks for us, people coming into your country. It's not a good thing for us. We become exporters of people, not exporters of products, right? Yet in the United States, we somehow feel like we're doing everyone a favor by letting people come in. And the truth is, we always sort of assume that countries can't clean themselves up or fix their problems, right? El Salvador actually did address its problems. That president of El Salvador has been in office for 1.5 years, and he's worked really hard. And El Salvador went from the #1 place from Central America that people came illegally into the U.S. to the bottom of the list from Central America. Why? Because he started to clean the place up. He made cities safer. He made communities safer. The MS-13, he made it safer. And he started to create economic opportunities. And so people wanted to stay. And his whole point is immigration isn't good for either side. I don't mean all immigration, illegal immigration, floods of illegal immigration. It's not good. It's not good for their countries. They don't want to be net exporters of people. And he's saying it's really not good for you guys either. Why does he say that? Because he recognizes something that a lot of people on the left of center don't want to acknowledge, which is immigration is healthy and natural and important part of a nation's growth. But massive illegal immigration works against everybody. There are astronomical costs associated with it. Billions and billions of dollars spent in states like California, Texas, that have massive immigration flows, the biggest states, way more than the receipts that are brought in. Huge, huge costs. Plus there's, extended crime. Plus you have all kinds of problems having, you create a polarization. Again, these are people coming in illegally. They're not bad human beings. They're coming for a better opportunity, but they're coming here illegally in huge numbers, and it bugs people. So the president of El Salvador is saying that isn't good for you guys either. Problem is Joe Biden doesn't want to admit that. He thinks, no, it's great for us. It's not actually. Massive amounts of illegal immigration is not great for us. People fleeing their country for amnesty is a legitimate reason. But everybody claims amnesty now. It's like people aren't dumb. They're told, claim amnesty. Just say, claim it. It's the only way you'll get in. You can't just come in illegally. You got to claim amnesty. So we have this kind of holier than thou, we're the savior of the world approach that I think is kind of condescending to a lot of the world. And Biden continues it. Trump was an aberration from it, right? Most presidents had it. Trump had that view. He just exercised it differently because Trump wanted to stop immigration, right? Trump's priority for immigration was cut it off, illegal immigration. Biden's priority was let's make it work better, right? Signaling for people to come. But either way, it's this notion that we have to fix everybody else. Biden's going to send hundreds of millions of dollars of aids to these countries, saying it will help improve their economies, which is actually true. But what if you spent that $500 million on improving our own cities? Do you know Baltimore in 2018 had a higher crime rate than El Salvador, than Honduras and Guatemala? People fleeing because of the violence in their cities, in their countries, coming to the U.S. Baltimore has a higher crime rate. Our cities are ravaged. Our poor rural communities are ravaged, but our big cities are a mess. They're broken. They're crumbling. The infrastructure, the violence, the shootings every week in every major city, the bad schools, I keep talking about it. They're a mess. Why don't you put that? Why is that not your number one priority? How did your number one priority, first thing you did when you got into office was immigration reform stuff, then pass COVID and then go back to immigration? What signal does that send to the American people? And again, why are we the place that the whole world feels like, we have the obligation to fix the whole world? How about we fix ourselves a little bit first? That's not to say we shouldn't welcome immigration and we shouldn't welcome, legal immigration. And it's not to say people won't still try to come here illegally. They will. The problem with Trump and Biden is there were two polar sides of the problem. Trump was so so hate, stirred that up, got elected on, I'm going to build a wall. And Biden was the opposite running. He was totally like, we need to, the debates when they make them all say, would they, promise open immigration? And some people basically did. So it again sends this terrible signal to people about coming into the country when we truly can't support it. We can't afford them. Krusen, the crime rate is not down dramatically in a lot of places. It is gone down. In some places, it's going up. But, not my point. My point that the crime rate in Baltimore was higher than El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras is my point. And Krusen, I don't think you or anybody else would argue that our cities, Chicago has more gun violence every week. It's like a mass shooting every week. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people killed every weekend. Sometimes more. 15, 20, 30 people shot. I mean, the crime, again, you can't deny that our cities are ravished and our cities are broken. And I am not saying we shouldn't have legal immigration. Let me be clear. When it comes to the illegal immigrants already living here, we have two separate issues. One is the people who are here. One is the people who are trying to come here illegally. And they actually dovetail each other. I think the people already here are part of the U.S., right? So my point is we should be focusing on fixing the U.S. first. And part of fixing the U.S. first involves dealing with the fact that we have anywhere between 10 and 25 million people living here right now, technically illegally. To me, those people don't get sent back somewhere. They're part of America. They're part of the fabric of America right now. They've been here. They've grown. They've invested their lives, their time, started to have families, become productive. Not every one of them, but become productive members of society. But they're forced to live in the shadows. That's not okay. That's not acceptable at all. I worked at an inner city high school in Los Angeles. A huge number of the kids were Dreamer kids, you know, right? The DACA kids. And you know, a lot of their parents were here illegally, and a lot of them were, you know, first, you know, their parents didn't even speak English. Those kids shouldn't get deported, nor should their parents. So I'm not anti-immigration at all, nor am I anti-illegal immigrant when it comes to people living here. Those people are part of America. They belong here. We need to find a pathway for them. That is a separate issue than Chicago. Yeah, you're going to have to show me those numbers, Krusen. Again, you can throw, any one of you, throw a stat at me all you want. If you do not think Chicago is racked with violence, go back, watch the news feeds, watch the police chief, watch the chief of police, watch Mayor Lightfoot, watch them talk about how devastating, watch the black urban leaders talk about how devastating the cycle of violence is repeatedly. Every time we had a mass shooting in the last year and a half, the story would pop up later. How come cities like Chicago, we don't put more attention on the fact that once again, there are dozens and dozens of shooting every week? It's just a reality. So I don't care which number it's on. I'm not looking at the overall crime rate. The violence level in the inner cities of America is horrific. And my point is merely we should spend tons of money on fixing that. So when I say there's two sides to the problem, one is the people who are here, and that's an American problem. So I'm not in the camp of people who are like, they're not us. They are us. They are you, absolutely. They are your neighbors. They may be someone who works with you or for you. They may be, you know, their children may be going to college with your children. They have become part of the fabric of America. And it's a disgrace that we haven't in 30 years figured out how to deal with it. Oh, the Gang of Eight, immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform. Everybody talks about it. It's a bunch of BS. Neither side gets serious about actually dealing with that. And so we get fixated on is the border. The border, where we now have another crisis of people coming in, which, by the way, just do the simple logic. Tons and tons more people trying to come over the border right now inflames people's frustrations about the people who are already here. If instead you said, no more people come in illegally, we're going to be hard asses about it. We really are. We're not going to say open with welcome arms. I mean, we'll take the smallest number of legit amnesty cases. Excuse me, but it's got to be small. It's got to be legit because everybody's claiming it right now. You know, it's just one of those things. You would have a better chance getting the country unified around the idea that we've got 10 to 30 million people living here right now being considered undocumented or illegal, and we need to find a pathway to citizenship for them. And if Biden wants to get that through a closely divided House and an even more closely divided Senate, which I again call the black hole of death for anything that goes into it, he needs to have people on board. Letting people come, and at some level they know that. That's why they're pushing back, but they opened the door to this. So my point is the border is where we should be pushing for security and having a hard-ass approach. And, you know, look, you can not like Trump for the way he said things or did things, but he wasn't wrong to want a strict border policy. He was wrong to not be more inclusive about how he was going to deal with the people who were here. And to those people, I say, we need to have a path to citizenship, and every one of us needs to get on board with that. The idea that we find a way for people who've been living here to legitimately become citizens of the United States. It's not an instant step thing, but to find a legitimate path. And by the way, I've talked to a lot of people who are here illegally, well, especially when I was in California. And you know what I would find over and over again? They didn't want more people to come in illegally. They want to come take their jobs. Exception if it's my cousin or my brother, but everybody else, no. You know, because it makes sense, right? Means come for a better opportunity. They want someone else to get it too. But if we could separate the two things, if we could see the one side is the border and not be afraid. During the Democratic debates, it bugged me how much they were kind of saying, no, people should be able to come in. People should be able to come over. We shouldn't really have a hard border. Beto O'Rourke and all that. Even Kamala Harris, you know, Biden kind of hedged on the fence on it. No pun intended. You know, well, you should give you lots of benefits when you come over. It's just going to piss people off who are already feeling like we're struggling. But the reality is those people who are already living here are struggling too, and they're part of us. They're part of us. And they need to be treated as part of us, and we need to find an actual solution. And if Biden had come out and said, my number one thing is, first of all, I'm going to focus on American cities first before I deal with immigration. As for the border, I'm going to seal that thing off. Nobody's coming in right now. And we are then going to get everyone on board the idea of finding a comprehensive reform for the millions of people right now living here who have to go by the status of illegal immigrant or undocumented. Not okay. But he didn't do that. And you can't have it all in a jumble puddle. Doesn't work that way. Just becomes jello. Back to my point that Biden, and by the way, you know, the president of Mexico and Biden aren't getting off to, you know, oddly, the president of Mexico, you know, López Obrador, actually had a good relationship with Trump. The polar opposites, the socialist and the whatever Trump was, ultra conservative. But they had a very one-on-one relationship that they managed to work. And there's already tensions in the relationship with Biden. And you know, and they have different agendas about what they want. And you know, the president of Mexico doesn't want, you know, isn't a fan of letting tons of people come over. And he's got to keep people from coming into his country. Immigration from the southern parts of Central America into Mexico is a massive problem. So any country knows it's a problem to have a huge inflow of people coming in illegally. And it doesn't work. And we've already got a huge number of people here who need to stop being considered illegal. And we got to find a pathway, a route to give them citizenship. And that route is going to be tough because there's going to be resistance. So again, I don't want to go another 5 years where once again, we just talk about comprehensive immigration reform and never do it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. It's time we found a pathway for people who've been living here, working here, to be citizens of the United States, and one that we can all agree on, both as from a humanity point of view and from a practical economic point of view. They are part of America. But the people outside this country who keep trying to come in, they're not. And as a populist, I care first and foremost as a patriotic populist about the people in my country. And that includes the people who've been living here, working here, whether they have a legal status or not. And that's the hard divide that the Biden administration is going to have to make. I'm Rob Nelson. Thanks for watching.